Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchists Dave, and tonight we're cracking open the bestiary of the imagination. We're talking creature creation, not just how to build them, but how to build them into your world.
And I'm Nerdarchists Ted. Tonight we're diving into the arcane art of creature creation, not just monsters, but living, breathing pieces of your world's story. Zoo Mafia takes us into a 1920s-style zoo overrun with crime, at least when the humans aren't looking. The animals are not cartoonish or anthropomorphic, they're real zoo animals playing roles in underground mob war. During the day, they're cage spectacles. At night, they're running smuggling routes, hitting rival territories, or cutting deals on banana-scented speakeasies. It's a Prohibition-era grit, but with fur, feathers, and fangs.
How does this topic of original creatures, creating original creatures, apply to Zoo Mafia? Tonight's topic is all about creating creatures that feel like they belong in your setting. In Zoo Mafia, your monsters are the characters, but that doesn't mean the world isn't crawling with unique animal personas. Each species has its own role to play in the criminal ecosystem. Creature creation here is less about building monsters to fight, more about crafting memorable allies, rivals, and unpredictable wild cards in a living, breathing zoo underworld.
We're not talking about monsters in the traditional sense, we're talking about mobsters with claws. A gator enforcer named Ali who fights with brass knuckles. A rhino bruiser with a barbed wire bat. A koala paparazzo with dirt on everyone. These aren't just fun characters, they're creature designs that deeply intertwine with narrative and tone.
All right. Speaking of said rhino and alligator, we're going to start with our enforcer archetypes. Ali and Big Rene, Capone's enforcers, are brutal, terrifying examples of how a zoo animal becomes a boss battle with thick hide and heavy melee damage. They're more than muscle, they're obstacles that you have to outsmart unless you want to be flattened. So enforcer archetypes are something that we use in Zoo Mafia. They're not quite on par with the level of a mafia boss, but they're pretty strong and they're meant to challenge the players. And they know when the zookeeper mentions the enforcer tag that they're going to be in for a tough fight. These are going to be tough opponents.
You know, the aspect, and especially like early on in the game, dealing with enforcers are really tough because they're going to shrug off damage, potentially 1 to 2 points of damage in a system that doesn't really get above 3 or much above 3 is a serious struggle to put a hurt that's lasting on these type of characters. And when there's no gaining more hit points, there's no, let me just every few sessions stack on more damage. You really have to dive deep into your limited resource pool of markers or something to really bring something like these guys down. And we've always, when we've fought enforcers, it's been a fight that really requires a combination of resources, tactics, and good luck with the dice.
Yeah, so it just highlights another way for you to kind of interact with the world and inform your players of what's going on with that world. What do the encounter of these creatures particularly say about what's going on, right? Just because they do have heavy combat implications doesn't necessarily mean there has to be combat, as in with all role-playing games. You can always interact and try and negotiate and come up with other solutions. A lot of times enforcers are also portrayed as being a little mentally slow, but that doesn't always have to be the case because they can be a bruiser and educated as well. Right. But it sets the scene and just lets the players know, like, okay, here's a part of the world and the game that is going to act differently than the rest of the world or the rest of the game. And with Zoo Mafia, we try to create mechanics that enforce those themes. And you can take that same concept into your own games, whether it's Zoo Mafia or whether you're playing your D&D or another game, right? You can create mechanics to inform the players of what's going on, right? Like, for instance, if you have unsettling creatures that make them feel uneasy when they're around them, aka perhaps a fright effect, right? It's just another way to drill down on, like, what is this creature doing in the world so that your players can interact.
So when I look at things like enforcers, we really love player agency. And in a game like Zoo Mafia, where sure, there's going to be rumors and not everybody's going to have heard every little thing, this is a thing where you could reach out to your player and be like, okay, tell me something about Enforcer Ali, or Ali Gator, as he's called, and let the players like, oh, well, he killed so-and-so, or he survived an attack by this other group here. And it really allows the players to kind of collaborate and make a cool story that is going to then allow them to understand the level of how tough a fight this actually is and give the players the chance to truly buy in on what these characters are meant to represent. I feel using enforcers, it's a good thing to be like, okay, well, I'm going to throw them out there. Let them be this intimidating thing in the beginning and give the players over the course of a campaign the tools to be able to bring them down. That is always a fun mini arc for players to be like, okay, this guy was a thorn in my side or was terrified of, and now I get to defeat them and win. It's not just, oh, well, it's the boss. Like, this is somebody that, is different than the boss. This is the one that, like, sure, I fear Machine Gun Otto, but Big Rene could be just as much a problem to me because it's Big Rene. Next, we can look at the concept of a player inconvenience, the archetype where we have like Outback Alice, a nosy koala journalist who snaps incriminating photos and disrupts your jobs. She's not a villain, she's a chaos factor, a social monster who attacks your secrecy instead of your health bar. So you've got this thing that sure, you can just go and wipe it out. But there's always the chance that another journalist is just going to step in the way. So you've got something that is a social hazard, but a hazard. You've got something that is a cool role-playing thing. And on the channel, I think we've done a couple of times of Runaway Rum, which is the adventure that is in the Quickstart rules that you can find over on the website. But we've run it offline numerous times. Dave and I have run it more times than I'm even wanting to try and count at this point in time, because this has been the showcase of the world, because it sets up a lot of different fun things. And the element of Outback Alice is, how are the players going to react to these elements of discovery? That, all right, you've been caught. Are you going to try and just destroy the evidence and move on? Are you going to try and negotiate with her? Are you going to try and blackmail her? Are you going to try and threaten her? There's so many different angles to look at. So when you're making this player inconvenience, this social thing that's there, you want to try and make things that are going to test your players and see what is their creativity for dealing with this inconvenience. Do they just want to wipe it out? Do they want to use their plethora of skills to find a creative solution? And I love players who come up with creative solutions, because it sends my brain in the directions that I hadn't thought of. And I love that.
Yeah. So this concept of this inconvenience archetype, right, is also a bridge. It doesn't always have to be, but I feel like a lot of times it will be. And what we're bridging here is the criminal elements of the Zoo Mafia and the kind of normie, regular citizenry of the Zoo Mafia settings, where they're not in the know, they're not criminals, they're not part of that world, where Outback Alice is perfectly designed to bridge those two things, because she wants to get the story. She wants to get the scoop. She wants to tell people what's going on. And therefore, she makes a great bridge between those two worlds. And it's also inconvenient, because more than likely, you also don't want the normies, not just the humans, but the normie animals, to know you're a criminal, because there is other consequences. You have the Claw Patrol, which is like our feds, or the Fuzz, which is our normal kind of like beat cops and law enforcement, right? So you still want to maintain your anonymity as a criminal and not get caught up in the Zoo Mafia justice system and be dragged before the courts and go to prison, whatever that looks like in a zoo, for doing these crimes, right? There could be other these inconvenience archetypes as well. They come up a lot, actually, in our games as our NPCs, as characters that have been created by the players. And oftentimes our zookeepers, whether it's me, Ted, or someone else who's running a game, will be like, hey, give me a character that you're connected to who is not a criminal, right? And they all take on this player inconvenience archetype, because for whatever reason, they're not part of your world. And you have to come up with, as a player, as to why. Is it because they don't want to be? They're uninformed? They don't know about that part of that aspect of your life? Or is it you're trying to protect them from that aspect? While you think it's the right move for you, you may not think it's the right move for your kid brother or kid sister or whatever. So it's a problem that you have to deal with, that you just can't use a stick of dynamite, a Molotov cocktail, or a set of brass knuckles on. It's going to require a bit more tact than that. Even the example of Outback Alice, yes, there are criminal ways to get rid of Outback Alice, but does it, in the long run, does it create more problems than it solves?
Yeah, and the concept of having the players provide NPCs, it ties them to the world. They're giving you what the relationship is, and it is a tool, a crutch that you get to use against them to put that NPC in danger. Now, I don't do this so that I'm like, haha, I can throw your loved one in danger just to be a dick. No, I'm doing it to make you make a choice, to help guide you in the direction of where I think the story is going. Now, if I put your abuela into harm's way and they don't know that you're involved in the criminal world, how are they going to react if your actions showcase what's going on? Or what happens if, their life literally is on the line and you don't roll well enough? Okay, well, that's how the stories go sometimes. And that's what these story elements are designed to do, to kind of test things out and see what happens. So regardless of the story, I love getting those kinds of things that I can use to help draw you into the story. It's just a lot of fun to be able to have that at my leisure. And from the first time when I was inexperienced at running Zoo Mafia, like every time I felt, oh, the players aren't making a choice to do something, so now I'm going to use this moment. And I would literally just roll a D4 to represent the players and a D3 to represent their contact, their person. And whatever came up, something was happening with whatever character was rolled. And stuff just happened. And I felt like that frequently had those kind of characters involved in what was going on in the story. And danger was definitely a possibility.
It's not just that. It's not just about danger and being able to threaten their loved ones, but it's also about tying them to the world and saying there are other parts to this world that aren't just crime, right? There's normies just trying to live their everyday life, and that's what they represent. And them popping up is normal life just happening. That isn't involved in the criminal underworld. And you came up with a great method for introducing that into the game randomly when you want it to happen. So last up, we have henchmen archetype, such as our monkey mooks that have showed up a lot. They're simple, 1 HP, armed with revolvers, and always in 2s or 4s. Their danger comes from numbers and timing. They're the mooks you love to hate, especially when they chase you on golf carts through the zoo. So a mook is just a low-level character, which you could actually do the same for law enforcement as well, when that comes up. But it's a way to represent a lesser threat in the game and also to kind of enmesh a bit of a caste system within the different societies, right? Of mechanically, right? We have bosses, we have enforcers, and then we have mooks, and mooks by themselves aren't really a threat to you. They can be a threat in numbers or in the sense that they can alert other people to what's going on who are more of a threat. I feel like they're more of like a pressure gauge, right? In the game. Be like, okay, here's a little bit of pressure to give the characters. If you don't deal with this quickly, it's going to build and get worse. Or a warning sign of like, oh, what? A couple mooks just came around the corner. What are you going to do? Because while they may not be a danger to you, they could alert others that are, or the authorities, or draw attention to you that you don't want brought to you. And like in all those instances, they've kind of come up as minor threats the players have dealt with. They've come up with as NPCs that were inconvenience, but definitely adversarial at the same time, where like, hey, you owe me money kind of deal. What are we going to do about this? Where it could turn to violence, but it doesn't have to. And just that kind of tension and creating that kind of a scuffle might draw unwanted attention, like from law enforcement.
The element of they're not going to be the ones to bring you down, but there's essentially, with the hand wavy aspect of the way this game is designed, each mobster basically has an unlimited number of moves. Like, you're never going to wear him down and just be like, oh, I don't have any more guys to throw at you. What do I do here? Unless like some drastic element has been done of like, oh, well, I blew up every building that is under your control and therefore your people couldn't be anywhere else. But that would let the humans know that something's going on and breaks all the rules. You've got these elements to look at. And from a mechanical standpoint, they're really great. They're a nice little tester to see, okay, well, especially with new players, how are you going to handle this style of combat? These guys only take one shot, one bullet, one punch, what have you, to go down. But there could be a lot of them. And if you put too many all at once and the players start rolling like crap, next thing you know, their health meter's dropping pretty rapid because there could be a lot of these things. It tends to be fun and a good tester. And we all have to have our kobolds, our goblins, our things that die super easy. With this, the mooks make a lot of sense. And they don't got to be monkeys. They can be finches. They can be pigeons. I use otters for machine gun auto, but you can use whatever you feel fits, whatever mob boss you're using.
Yeah, they also serve as a little bit of a ego boost for your players, right? Because they can take a lot of them out fairly easy and make them feel better about themselves. It's a great concept that I first became aware of when we started playing 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and they had minions, and the minions would get more powerful, but they always died when they took a point of damage. It also makes for like more thematic and cinematic style combat. So they're great in that regards.
All right, so what's your favorite animal for a mob boss? Is it a snake with a silver tongue? A gorilla in pinstripes? Let's know which beast you'd fear or follow in the zoo underworld. Thanks for hanging out with us. Your ideas in the chat were killer as always. Keep those creative fires burning, and remember, whether it's a stat block or a story beat, every creature you create is a chance to make your world unforgettable.
You had fun tonight. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next one. We've got more world building madness coming your way. Till next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.